But I want to tell you a story. Listen, I want to tell you a story. Shh. When I was a kid, I had 15 years old, I was in Los Angeles. And we used to have Mesiba Shabbos in Chabad, the North Beverly Hills, Rabbi Yossi Paltiel's shul. It was in Kings, Foothill Road. I think they moved now, but I used to go to that shul quite often. I think for a while I went every Shabbos. And we're also related, she's a mikwitz, we're Krev Mabissel. So I remember there was a shul, it was Beverly Hills, and there was a man there, I don't even know if he was from, I don't know if you can call him from, but he was married, and he had a kid, and he would come to the shul with his little boy, and he would daven with him, he would make a bracha. And he would sit with come from, he was barely from, but he would sit with his kid and he would make a bracha, make him shahakal, ha'moitzi, mezonis, whatever it was, but he was so completely immersed in his little child making a bracha. So I turned to Rabbi Schusterman, Yossi Schusterman, and I said to him, this is kind of interesting, there's a very balabatish people, Greisa Shirim, and this man, whose name I don't remember, was davening with his child with such a tmimus. So he said to me, the truth, I don't know how to explain it. He was busy with his child, that his child should make a bracha with an incredible tzugetrag, with incredible dedication. The reason I want to tell the story, it sits in my head. I think that the topic of Chinuch is a topic that we can never talk about enough. Today the world is very complicated, and the ideology, the shittas, the philosophies are very, very confused. There's so many different ideas. You get married. What do you know about marriage when you get married? What do you know about, you're married, yeah? What do you know about marriage when you get married? You only know one thing, what you saw in your own home. So either what you saw in your own home was good and you want to duplicate it. More likely, we saw in your home was such a disaster. You swore one thing: when I get married, I was fakert, and then you end up being more like your parents than your parents ever were. But what do you know about marriage? Then you get married and you have children. The truth of the matter is, we don't understand. But there's all these opinions and all these voices and all these shittas, and a lot of these shittas do not focus on Yiddishkeit and on Chinuch. And I feel very, very strongly, I think it's true. The Rebbe spoke about raising children. The Rebbe didn't speak only about creating an environment for the children to grow up in. The Rebbe spoke about raising children. And when I think about this, in my head, I prepared my drasha. The Rebbe wanted all of us to pay attention to the littlest details in our children's Yiddishkeit. A child, before he goes to sleep, takes negelwasser and he puts it by his bed. No child is going to take negelwasser by himself. He only takes negelwasser because he's taught by his father and his mother when he's very little that you go to the bathroom, you take the shissel, and you take the kvart, and you don't take the water from the bathroom, you go into the kitchen and you fill up the kvart and you put the negelwasser next to your bed. And there's the great sakona, rachmana litzlan, ho'elesiyah, that it's going to spill and the carpet's going to get wet. That says, ain't kleinigkeit. Children take negelwasser because their parents teach them this is what we do. No child says Kishma Shalamita before he goes to sleep unless his parents teach him. Before you close your eye, you say Shema Yisrael, the Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, whatever the kids say, Baruch Shem Echad. And of course, I remember as a kid, B'yotcha af kidruchi padis ha'eisha the Shem Kelames, the little kinderlach, they say, B'yotcha af kidruchi, I'm giving you my neshama, and I trust you that you'll give it back to me. Yeah, I'm giving you my neshama. It's in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The neshama is a pekadon which the Eibishter gives us, and every night we give the pekadon back to the Eibishter, and in the morning he returns it to us, regua, right, rested and fresh. Children say b'yadcha af kedruchi before they close their eyes at night and go to sleep, because Tati and Mami sat by their bed and they said with them b'yadcha af kedruchi. But for Tati and Mami to sit by their bed and say with them b'yadcha af kedruchi, Tati and Mami have to really appreciate how serious this is. He's a little kid and he's going to sleep. What's the big deal? It's a very big deal. There's a cloud gadol. Yiddishkeit is made up of 1,000 little things. Yiddishkeit, you know, we had, this is my speech. Now I'm going off into my regular world of bluff. Yeah, we had two mayors in New York City. We had two mayors. We had a mayor Dinkins, we had a mayor Giuliani. One after the next. I mean, most of you guys don't remember them, but I do. What was it between Mayor Dinkins and Mayor Giuliani? Mayor Dinkins was black. He was African American. And he was elected by black people. So they were his constituents. We voted for him also, by the way. But they were his constituents. So when he became the mayor, Mayor Dinkins made an announcement. I remember the announcement. That the kid on the street corner who's selling drugs for $5, I'm not going to prosecute. What's he doing? I'm going to go after the bigwigs. I'm going to go after the guy who's going from corner to corner and making the kid sell the drugs, who's making the millions. I'm going to put him in jail. During Mayor Dinkins' term as mayor, you couldn't walk the streets of Crown Heights, of New York. It was dangerous. The violence, the city spun out. I mean, we had Catch before with all of his chesedness, but it was a half-decent mayor. He saved the city, whatever it is. But Dinkins' philosophy, I'm going after the big criminals, you couldn't walk the streets. Then came Giuliani, an Italian, and he made quality of life crimes. You can go to jail for making noise. He had serious business. The effects of Giuliani were felt 20 years after his mayorship was up. He said, I'm not going to let people do small avedas. The fact of life is, if people do small avedas, they b'meila don't do big ones. That's how it goes. If you want to say, I'm going to focus on the big avedas, 1,000, it says Tanya. Mechi sich auf peshecha v'chonen gatisecha. Yeah, in Yigel it's a tshuva state. Mechi sich auf peshecha v'chonen gatisecha. As a mechitzes, rabbis, klushes, a lot of skinny little mechitzes adds up to an ov, v'sachan on an ov, v'kal, a shredder. A lot of little walls add up to a big wall. When we're raising our children, it's all about little things. And as parents, we have to make it to an iked, these little things. The way the kid takes negavas, the way the kid says kriya shema, the way the kid says b'yadcha af kedruchi, and then when he gets up in the morning he says meida ani. None of these things happen by themselves. This is chinuch. This is chinuch, and I need to say this also. A lot of people, when the kids are very, very little, they give them a very, very good chinuch. And the kids get a little bit bigger. Who's called 1 o'clock in the morning? And they go to school. And once the kids go to school, the parents think that the school is educating the kids. When the kids get bigger, the chinuch detail, the pratim of chinuch, which are negiah l'maisa, change. But at each stage of our child's lives, we have to raise them. I mean, the things which everybody sees is how a child behaves in shul. A child comes to shul to daven, not to play. And he does it this way because his father and his mother raised him. The Rebbe's whole metzias is chinuch. The Rebbe's whole metzias is chinuch. And the chinuch, your mother, like Shak told me, your mother, she came to class every day for 25 years. It was incredible. So she didn't interrupt me that often, but that Chinuch, she let me know, excuse me, Yossi, krichad up from fed, you know what I'm saying. But she said to me once, the Rebbe spoke a siche when the Rebbe made the Sefer Torah for children. In Tavshim Mem Aleph, Yud Nissen Mem Aleph. The Rebbe actually said, Ich will ech et beten. He thinks, I want to ask you something. Yud Aleph Nissen, the Rebbe, Shastov Malach, the Rebbe turned 79. He was going into his 80th year. The Rebbe made a Sefer Torah for children. And the Sefer Torah for children, Ada Yom Hazeh, was very, very special. Koydem Kol, every us cost $1. V'ashenis, I mean, if you can remember, it's 40 years ago. The Rebbe wanted that the children in America should give $2. $1 to buy themselves an os, and another $1 to buy an os and a sefer Torah for a child behind the Iron Curtain, a child in Russia. En ik denk, als nog Pesach, we Farbrengen, du gedenkst das? Wo der Rebbe hat gegeben mal geschrei, statt a koi sefer Torah, du gedenkst das? Statt a koi sefer Torah, the Rebbe got our regards. That when the Rebbe made this mitzvah sefer Torah, and the Rebbe wanted each child to give $1 to buy a letter, and to give a second $1 to buy a letter for a child in Russia. So the children in Russia were told, however they got this information, the children in Russia were told that there's a boy or a girl in New York who bought them an os and a sefer Torah. So the Rebbe told the story that they came to a little boy in Russia and they told him that a boy in America bought him a sefer Torah. And I remember the Rebbe cry. The Rebbe said, I give in. Shtat a sefer Torah. What's a sefer Torah? So he came to his father and his mother, and he said to his father and his mother, what's a sefer Torah? And his father and his mother told him, we don't know, ask the Baba, maybe the Baba knows. The child was given us a sefer Torah, but the Rebbe wanted that the children should buy ACS. So what the Rebbe described, this is what your mother was telling me, that the child should fill out the application himself. As I unschreiben the nomen, he should write his name and his address. And the Rebbe said, Kiderech Hayelodim, that when he writes, he sticks out his tongue. The Rebbe described a little child sitting down to fill out an application. He's buying a letter sefer Torah, and he's writing it himself with a steckt dem Zung. He sticks out his tongue as he's concentrating and trying to write each letter. The Rebbe dedicated an enormous amount of time to this idea that the raising of little children comes down to 1,000 little details. 1,000 little details. And Aboisai, not one of them is insignificant. There's no such thing when it comes to our children as nicht sehr wichtig. When it comes to our children, every little thing is so important. So important. The way they wash negelwasser, the way they get dressed. The way they put on their shoes, the way they tie their shoes, the way they wash negelwasser, the way they say Bechas HaShachar. I'm a malamed, that's what I do. I'm a teacher. And I teach teenagers, boys and girls. And one of the things that whenever I get a chance, I bring up in my conversation with the kids is Bracha Rishena. I think the Rebbe spoke about it once. No, the Rebbe spoke Bracha Achrena. They made recently a tape, Bracha Rishena. Bracha Rishena means you're in yeshiva, you're in school, and one of your friends has a bag of chips, and you want to have a chip, you put your hand into the bag, you pull out a chip, you pop it into your mouth, and you forget to make a bracha. The Rebbe spoke once in a sikha that most people are careful of Bracha Rishena, and they're not careful of Bracha Achrena. Jem does every week a video, so 1 week in the Bracha Achrena. The point is, we're parents, and we have children, and we miyakir yede prat, every detail of inyanim of Torah and mitzvahs, both the things that they do every day, as well as the things that they do special for Shabbos, they do special for Yom Tov, whatever the case is. We make it our business to show our children, first of all, what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it, and we communicate to our children how important these little things are. The Kleinigkeiten von Yiddishkeit sind sehr wichtig. Yiddishkeit is made up of 1,000 little things. And we're not cosmic, you understand? When we're raising our children, we're not thinking about the big things. The whole Chinuch is the little details, the kleine Einzelheiten, whatever it is. I mean, there's so many examples that you could give, but I mean, this is the example that everybody talks about. Your kid comes to shul, and he sits next to you when he davens. Your kid comes to shul, and he listens to Kriyas HaTorah. Your kid comes to shul, and when he's a little bit older, he says Tillim. And you reward him for this, and you acknowledge this, and you point this out. All of these little things only happen if we value them. If we consider them important in our lives. And it's a yesod. It's a yesod. I think it's a yesod in the Rebbe. It's a yesod that we're big machers, and we're grown up, and we're smart people, and we're great intellectuals. And when it comes to ourselves, it's better, we shouldn't talk about it. But when it comes to our children, we have to appreciate that we have to be medayek al kol prat. And when we're medayek al kol prat with our children, we become medayek al kol prat with ourselves, and that is how we raise Yiddish kinderlach. That is how we raise Chassidish kinderlach. Children do not grow up to be Erlich Yidden by mistake. They don't grow up to be Erlich Yidden through a nes, and too often we're relying on the nes. Temchen ala nes. It's not the program. The program is, we have little children. Everything that's important, we teach them. And we should understand that the teeniest, tiniest little things that they do. Van der meis befriedig het hebben. Van der meis befriedig het hebben. What's the befriedig het hebben? Befriedig was a little boy. There's more than one story. But one of the befriedig was a little boy. And he was eating breakfast. And his father, he was maybe 3 or 4. His father, the Rebbe Rashab, walked in, and his father asked his mother, the Rebbe Rashab, had gemacht a bracha on the tzitzis. The Frierdiker Rebbe, he made a bracha on the tzitzis. So the Rebbe said, she didn't know. So she asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, you made a bracha on the tzitzis? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I made a bracha on the tzitzis. So the Rebbe Rashab said to him, mach a bracha on the tzitzis. Make a bracha on the tzitzis. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I already made a bracha, now make 2 brachas. And the Rebbe Rashab became my patch. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, the only time in my life my father hit me was that time. My father told me to make a bracha on the tzitzis, and I told my father I already made a bracha, and my father said I want you to make again, and I refused, and he gave me a patch. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said I started to cry. I didn't cry because it hurt. I cried because his father embarrassed him. So later I asked my father, I said the Frierdiker Rebbe gesagt, I asked my father, for whom do you make a bracha? Do you make a bracha for your father, or do you make a bracha for the Eibishter? Because I know I made a bracha. So the Rebbe Rashab said, a bracha machten for the Eibishter. A bracha you make for the Eibishter. But the Eibishter hat antreit jeder Vater. The Eibishter made the obligation on each father that he should teach his children how he's supposed to behave. And when the father says to his child that he should make a bracha, he has to listen to his father and make a bracha. It's on us, Rabbi Yossi, it's on us to be involved with our children's life and all of these details. The reason I feel this so important, because there's a new generation. And the new generation is very, very worried about the children's feelings. They're worried about self-esteem, and they're worried about being close to their parents. And there's this mamash, the pachad. I am afraid to raise my child because maybe my child is going to grow up, he's going to be OCD. But my child's going to grow up, and father's going to be that I'm a nudnik. I bothered him too much. Medaf harder in the kinder. Medaf harder in the kinder. We're Lubavitcher Chassidim. We have a Rebbe. This is what he believes. You teach your children how to be a Jew. You don't have to hit them. You don't have to scream at them. You don't have to be a meshuggah. But you can't leave them alone and expect them to learn this. You know, a father once told me, would a mother ever say to her child, you know, I want you to have good self-esteem, I'm not going to teach you how to brush your teeth. It was ever a pashut, yeah. If you have to teach your child how to brush your teeth, you have to teach your child how to make a bracha. You have to teach your child how important it is. A kleinigkeit, yeah. 6 hours. From what age does a child keep 6 hours? What age? How old? But I'm not talking about the 6 hours. I'm talking about the fact that the child hears, as a little child, that if you ate fleischiks, you can't eat milchiks for 6 hours. That's so important. Because you're teaching a child the earnestness of Yiddishkeit. This is Chinuch. This is Chinuch. This is Chinuch. Van Asipum in Frierdiker Rebbe. As Asipum in Frierdiker Rebbe. It's in the Likutei Deburim. It's a different story. What's the story? It's an interesting story. That the Rebbe's Rivka, the Rebbe Rayatz's Baba, the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandmother, made a tart in Yiddish, Tes Aleph Reish Tes, in English T-A-R-T. In the Sikh, a tart. It's a pastry, a cake, a Danish. And she gave it to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Anyway, the Frierdiker went out into the yard, and the whole cheder, all 7 kids, they got into the cheder, stood around them looking at this tart. These were kids living in a shtetl, they never saw cake in their life. So the Frierdiker broke it into 7 pieces, and he took the same size pieces as everybody else. He divided up even, and the way he tells the story, he was hoping that he wouldn't get caught. He wanted to eat the whole thing, but the Chaver chapped him, that he saw the cake, and he divided up into 7 even pieces, and he gave each one another shtikele, and he also ate it. And he made a bracha, beinim and imazenis, and he ate his piece, and he made al-michya. What he didn't know was that his father, the Rebbe Rashab, was watching the whole scene through the window. So the Rebbe Rashab called the Frierdiker Rebbe. He told him like this: "Ich hab gesehen, and those gehat, whatever word to use in Yiddish for a pastry. You had a tart, a cake. Und ich hab gesehen, and deine Chaverim haben heard that you have a cake, and they surrounded you. When ich hab gesehen, I saw further you divided up into 7 equal parts, and you took for yourself the same piece and took the rest of them. And the Rebbe said, das ist gut. Und ich hab gesehen, das gemacht a bracha. Und ich hab gesehen, das haben gegessen. Und ich hab gesehen, danach hast du gemacht a bracha achrene, das ist alles Gutes. Aber ich hab euch gesehen, said the Rebbe Rashab, I saw, as du hast gehofft, you were hoping to get the cake down before your chaver show up. You didn't want to share it. You didn't want to give it. Und das ist nicht gut. That's what he told the Frierdiker Rebbe. That's not good. The fact that you would have preferred that the chaver shouldn't know and you'll eat the whole cake, it doesn't nicht good. How old was Frierdiker Rebbe? 6 or 7? So when his father told him, he was very Frierdiker Rebbe. He cried so bad he threw up the little piece of cake that he gave it back. He threw it up. His mother, the Rebbe Tzaddik, walked in, and she saw the Rebbe Rayatz crying, and he threw up, and she had to put a idea what happened. And she said to him, nach a kind, was willst du von ihm? He's a little child, what do you want from him? Hat der Rebbe geantwortet, nein. Soll es in ihm nikne werden, mides teves, soll es in ihm nikne werden. The Rebbe Rashab says, no, you're wrong. It has to be a kinyan. He has to acquire the midas tevis. It's a strong story, but the teuchen of the sipur is we want good kids. Yeah, we invest. We don't only invest. I'm sorry. We don't only invest in self-esteem. We don't only invest in nice clothes. We don't only invest in making them happy and making them comfortable and alle gute Sachen. We invest in making them into Jews. Ich hab Kinder, Baruch Hashem. Es bemechel sein. My wife makes me say this. We have got 10 kinder and Baruch Hashem 9 kinder. One of our children passed away. I'm not trying to make you feel have rachmanas on me, but that's the nusach. We have 9 kids. We raised them. I mean, our youngest kid is now 15. But my kids have tightness to me. And one of the tightness I hit my children is, you're a nervous guy. Yeah, nervezer, an extremer. And I say to them, apparently nerves play a role. Never let her get nervous. Never let her get nervous. To be, what's the case? Never let her get nervous. If someone is if you're losing money, you get nervous, yeah? If your ball team, if the team that you support is losing the World Series, you're allowed to get nervous. When it comes to the kinder, when it comes to the chinuch, it'd be nice, sweet, don't worry, it's all good. I'm not saying you should be nervous. It's not the end of the world. The chadav and the kinder, we have to raise our children. And we have to teach them how to do Yiddishkeit. And we have to teach them how important Yiddishkeit is. Everything, every little detail. If you don't know how to prepare a lulav, let someone teach you. The Frierdiker Rebbe tells. The Frierdiker Rebbe tells these stories. Look at the bottom. He was 7 years old, and his father went into the sukkah to tie the lulav. So the Rebbe Rayatz described the Tata Genum the lulav on the Hadassim. The Rebbe Rashab took the lulav in the Hadassim. He had more Hadassim than we use, whatever number he used, 12 or 13 Shechilik. And he gave me the Arovas, the Frierdiker Rebbe says. And we walked into the sukkah together. I was holding the Arovas, and my father held the lulav and the Hadassim. My father picked me up, and he said, it was very little. He sat me down on the table. And I watched my father, as a tzugabun, he tied, Erev Yom Tov, he was my agad, he tied the lulav. The Rebbe asked a little boy, And when the Rebbe Rashab had to tie his lulav, he wasn't nervous and in a rush at the last minute. He took his little boy with him. He should see how you tie a lulav. It's a simple story, right? But the story is Hayro B'chaim. You have a 7-year-old kid. When you tie your lulav, you take him with you into the sukkah. Now, can't be nervous, and you have to have enough time. But you're teaching. We're always teaching our children. We're always teaching our children. We're teaching our children, we're sitting in a car going on a trip. We're teaching our children, we're sitting by the Shabbos meal. We're always teaching our children. Rabbi Yossi Chinuch it's 1,000 cuts. That's what it is. It's 1,000 little things. It's 1,000 little things. If we love our children, this is Taka Shekel Chamaisi. That the Rebbe Rashab, the Friedrich Rebbe was a Bachanach, so it was before 17. He got married at 17 years old. But the Friedrich Rebbe, he was a younger man, he was Zakt. And the Rebbe Rashab, listen to this. The Rebbe Rashab told the Friedrich Rebbe, that he should stand in front of a sofa, in front of a couch. And he should be misboinen and einfach chassidus. Until he's so tired that he falls down on the couch. The Friedrich Rebbe got a ganz gute Kopf, got a starke Kopf. He probably stood for 20 hours. He stood forever. His father told him, stand here, sit and concentrate on a deep himself till he can't stand anymore. Anyway, the Rebbe the Friedrich Rebbe's mother, walks into the room, and the Rebbe Rashab is doing his work like as if nothing is going on. And the Friedrich Rebbe is standing next to a sofa on canvas steht, as if he was shikir. He'd been standing there for so many hours, he was barely keeping himself from falling down. So the Rebbe tells the Rebbe Rashab, what's this? So he tells him, Pashtus. Ich habe gesagt, da stehen und trachten an ihr Pnimi, bis fallen, till he falls. So the Rebbe says to her husband, the Rebbe said, what are you doing? This is torture. So the Rebbe says, was kind willst du? What kind of child do you want? Was kind willst du? What do you want a kid? What kind of kid do you want? We have to appreciate when we have little kids, we have medium kids. I spent now 2 days with shluchim. I'm so good. I do so much talking. I forgot what I said. We haka chaynik give it out. But I told shluchim avot. Think about this, Rabbi Catherine. Think about this. Parents come to PTA for their babies who are 4 years old. Right? 4-year-olds. Pictures. Kipshute pictures. Yeah. You come to PTA, the husband and the wife come together to listen to the Morah telling them that the kid knows how to cut straight, or has to sit in circle time, or whatever, and he goes to the bathroom, knows how to wash his hands and say Asher Yotzad, yeah? Every parent comes to PTA and leaves the teacher a card with a beautiful thank you and a check. Richtig? Yes.
That's what they made the PTA for.
The PTA. Wait, let me finish the PTA a minute. The now come zweite class, 2nd grade. The kids are now 6.5, 7 years old. So first of all, a few parents didn't show up to PTA. Some parents, the husband came without the wife, or the wife came without the husband on the phenomenon. And there's a significant number of parents who forgot to leave a check. By the time you get to the 9th grade, the Chatchila kommt Mensch wie eine von den Eltern, and nobody leaves a check. This is how it is. Richtig, Kalman. I didn't see it at Varim. So I'm talking to Shluchim, who are parents. The Shluchim parents and the kinder, they're younger than I am. So isn't it backwards? Your 4-year-old, Mamish, the 4-year-old Mora who's teaching your children how to cut and how to wischen sich in Besakise. Ich meine, dort darf man geben a prize, yeah? But the boy who is learning a mother from his Malamed, or the girl who is learning from her teacher, whatever her teacher's teacher, dort man vergessen. It wasn't the pshat. What is the pshat? Everybody comes to PTA for the babies. The older you come, the less likely. So one of the truths is you get bored of PTA. The whole thing is the bracha levatala anyway. The teachers tell you what you want to hear. So you learned that when the kids were little. Yeah, but when you have the 8th or 9th child, you're still coming when they're pishers, and you're still not coming when they're in 7th and 8th grades. What's the pshat? So but one of the biyurim is that you don't feel like your children are your achrayas. You feel like at this point the children have got their own life. When the kids are very little, you're protecting them. You don't want to get hurt. They're so dependent upon you. They're so little, so you care about them. They get a little bigger. They're okay. They know how to punch back. You see, the problem with this is that we forgot what it's about. It's not about the kid being able to manage my life. It's about my child being a Yid. And if I want my child to be a Yid, I have to make him. And I make him by valuing every step of my child's child rearing, and I invest and I pay attention. As the kids get bigger, I find those in Yonim that are Mizakh of English, age appropriate for that child, and I teach them. I teach my kids. I teach my children when they're 2, I teach my kids when they're 12, I teach my children when they're 22, I teach my children when they're 52. I know mishpachas where the tata is 85 years, the kids are in the 60 years, and they'll tell you straight, my father is still parenting, my father is still teaching me. That's how it is. That's how it is. This is chinuch. And in this generation, it's a particularly difficult nisayon. There's too much of leave the kids alone. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want to hurt them. It's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. I'm not saying that you have to frighten your kids and be a nervous and angry guy. But a little nerves, a little anger, it's okay. It's okay. A little bit, it's okay. Teach your children that this is important. If you have a beautiful set of china and the dish breaks, you get upset. If you have a beautiful new car that gets a scratch, it gets upset. If a kid misses Krishma, you get upset. You don't get upset in the kind of way that you crush him, but the child has no mind to in detail. This is history. Okay, you heard this from your father. I heard it from the same father. My father came from Russia. My father was raised in Moscow. My father, whatever. He's a big ness. He's a big ness. Anybody who came from that world was a bissel normal. They came out of Russia. And they ran from place to place. So they went to the DP camps, and then they came to these big houses in France. My father told me that they lived in a palace, as a palaz. 25 rooms. 25 rooms, 25 mishpachas. Jede Mishpacha hat a Zimmer. Ich habe gelernt, als schon dort Hefzit Chasne gehabt, in der Jurenka Zimmerin, hat sein Balabos, hat sich hereingerückt in Beisakise. That was their bedroom. They moved into the bathroom. There was no other rooms. A Mishpacha hat Zimmer. My father told me, that he woke up in the morning and he comes downstairs in his big house, and a man who was in his 40s is sitting on the steps and crying. Now in those days, people were dying like cockroaches die. A person cries, something terrible happened. So my father was asking, my son was afraid to ask. He told the guy, what's your name? What's your business? Everything was a state secret. So my father asked people, what's veinte? Verschlafen Krishma. You see, my father saw it. I heard it. And my children are hearing it from me. That's called Diridas Adedis. When was the last time you saw a person cry because they felt Krishma? You see a Yid cry because they felt Krishma. I'm not saying you're going to say Krishma every day of your life, but you'll take Krishma very seriously. That's on us! I don't hear you. That's on us. That's on us. We need to teach our children how important this is. Ayit bin erzählt a Meise. Okay, I'm definitely erzählt a Meise. Anyway, this is Chinuch. This is Chinuch. Medaf hadar the kinder. Again, I think that it's very important not to make your kids mental cases. But I also think you can't spend your whole life worrying about them being mental cases. That's a mental illness also. You have to raise the children. You have to teach them. You have to teach them. When they come up from school, and what they did in school matters. If they learned, matters. If they behaved, matters. If they had midas rice, matters. My grandfather told me, he was not a Lubavitcher. This is an American story, okay? This is my mother's family. My mother's father, my youngest son, was named after him. He went to Terevidas, which is a long story. His older brother went to Terevidas, and Mr. Mendelovich told him he's one child from each family. This is a true story. It's worth it. It's a good piece of Lashon Hara. My grandfather's older brother, case Moshe Yehuda, he went to Terevidas. Mr. Mendelovich, Shagafai Mendelovich, was a landsman to my Baba, to my elder Baba, my grandfather's mother. They knew each other from the Haim. So when my grandfather was the youngest. When he became 8, she go to Cheder, so she came to Shagir Father Mendelovich, Mr. Mendelovich. He didn't want you to call him Rabbi. He says, "Die misst sie dem mein Shul. I'll take my shul." So Mr. Mendelovich told her, "Ich nehme ein Kind von jeder Mishpacha." There was such a demand for seats at Vadas. There was not enough space. It was one of the few chadarim in the whole state of New York. I take one from each family. She says, "They missed them my shul." Anyway, they argued. You're talking now 1925. It's more than 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago. So he says to her, "I'm not taking him." And she says to him, "You are taking him." Back and forth, back and forth. So he tells her like this. She tells, my elder brother, he tells Chai, I'd love to say, "Hey, the Rems man shul, jeden Tag in the free Chinuch do Nana Zayir. Every day I'm coming in the morning, 9 o'clock. You know the story? And I am going to follow you around like a second skin. You go into the office, I'll sit outside. You walk in the hall, I'm following you. You go home for lunch, I'm following you home." Anyway, she did it. She came to the Cheder, Tervidas, was in Williamsburg, and she stood outside his office. He walked out the office to go into the classroom, she followed him, she stood outside. And in the kitchen. 3 weeks. Very, very sugar, he would go home for lunch. She got on the bus, she followed him home. She stood by his front door. He came out. After 3 weeks, says, "Guy should have hired a shick them kids. Go home and send your son. I'd rather have him follow around than you." That's why we're Jews. Chinuch. It's serious. It's so easy today. But easy doesn't mean that it's not an avoida. The avoida is we have to invest in our children in every detail. When the kids go to school, it's uns negeya, not just when they're 4, when they're 14. It's really true. It's not a perfect science. There's children who suffer, and there's children whose parents push them too far, there's children who don't fail. But berubam avaroiv tedaber, when your child knows what's important to you, that's what's going to be important to them. And if what's important to you is in Yonim Chitzoniyim, you can say whatever you want. To them, that's what's going to be important. And if it's negeya to you in Yonim Pnimiyim, it'll be negeya to them in Yonim Pnimiyim. That's just the way it is. Now, I know everyone's worried about self-esteem. It's a very big problem. Self-esteem is a very big problem. And I am not going to say it isn't. But Muz Hadav and the kind. Anyway, this speech is over. I just feel like I have to talk about Chinuch and us. Nadav, Hadav and the Kinder. Divas haben Hatzlacha mit Kinder. They say it's mazel. It's not mazel. It's Mesiras Nefesh. It's not mazel. If a mishpacha has good Kinder, there's a reason. There's a reason. When you have a Nebuchadnezzar good kid, sometimes it's mazel. But if a heart good Kinder, it's a nicht umzist. It's not a mistake. When you see in a mishpacha, ein kind hashena, zweite kind hashena, it is a reason. Somebody raises them, and we need to raise our children and not leave it alone and not allow ourselves to be busy with things that are not nearly as important as Yiddishkeit. Okay, l'chaim v'levrach. Yeah, please do. You're a kohen? You're a kohen? Okay, I also wash. Okay, let's make a zimun. Huh? So you do one day, and a second day, and a third day. You're tougher than him. You wait him out. You don't push him. You don't force him. But you never give up.
Right, so don't give up. I'm just saying.
But you every day say, you have to daven. Say Krishma. And one of the eitzes that always works is you say, when you'll be big, you'll wash. When you'll be big, you'll bench.